Graham Morris.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and it's a pleasure to follow the honourable member for Southend United West, and I wish her well in her efforts to secure the future of her team. I'd like to express my gratitude to the Backbench Business Committee, to my dear friend the honourable member for Gateshead and his colleagues for giving us the opportunity to participate in this crucial debate here in the House of Commons, and to thank my good and right honourable friend, member for Ross Skye in Loch Harbour, as well as the honourable member for Murray, for their support in securing backbench time for this debate. I also want to acknowledge the PFA, the Professional Footballers Association, and the invaluable contribution of Dr. Judith Gates, who's one of my constituents. Dr. Gates is a distinguished academic and educator, renowned for her expertise in chronic traumatic encephalopathy. That's the condition that's been linked to repetitive head impacts in sport. On Monday, we will witness the launch of a new charity, Head Safe Football, in Ferry Hill in County Durham, with a specific focus on brain-related issues in football. Dr. Gates spearheaded this initiative at the request of the footballing community, aiming to provide emotional support, evidence-based knowledge and up-to-date research for footballers and their families. And Dr. Gates' dedication to this cause is deeply personal. And it's deeply personal because she is the spouse of the former England and Middlesbrough footballer Bill Gates. Bill was diagnosed with dementia after a career which included a training programme involving hundreds of headers every day, and that led unfortunately to headaches with migraines, and it caused him to retire from football aged only 30 years of age. Bill was a renowned centre-half and is remembered for his prowess in the air, but his legacy is promoting head-safe football and raising awareness about the link between repetitive head impacts and CTE. It was referred to by my right honourable friend, but I also want to commend the Scottish Football Association for their proactive stance on addressing CTE and indeed other brain diseases that are caused through football. Their efforts, including research initiatives, concussion protocols, restrictions on heading in youth football and limits on repetitive heading in training, have set a commendable example. The evidence overwhelmingly supports the link between repetitive heading of a football and brain diseases. Several people have suggested to me that it's theoretical or there's some doubt about it. There's absolutely no doubt about it. There's a plethora, there's a huge amount of evidence from at home and abroad, and I'm going to mention some of the academic studies, but it strikes me, I mean, my late father was a coal miner, and miners sadly were subjected to many industrial diseases, pneumoconiosis, chest diseases, vibration white finger through the use of pneumatic power tools. I know many of my constituents worked in the textile industry, in the rag trade, and many of the women machinists suffered Dupuytren's contracture from their work. All of those conditions are recognised as industrial diseases, as occupational diseases, and the Industrial Injuries Advisory Committee. Now, I'm looking at the Minister here. I don't know whether he has the power to direct the Industrial Injuries Advisory Committee or ask them to look at this, because until it's recognised formally as an industrial disease, the compensation that these people and their families so richly deserve isn't available to them. And we often focus on the top flight celebrity professional footballers, but there are many footballers who don't play at the very highest level, but who similarly have been exposed to repetitive brain injury and are really living in hardship and we have a duty of care to them. If I may, Madam Deputy Speaker, I would like to again mention the study by the University of Glasgow carried out quite recently in October 2019, and that revealed a clear connection between professional football players and neurodegenerative diseases. And this research compared the mortality rates of over 7,600 former Scottish footballers with a general population sample of over 230,000 individuals. So it was a very large sample, and the findings indicated a 3.5-fold higher mortality rate due to neurodegenerative diseases among former professional footballers, with notable increases in Alzheimer's disease, motor neuron disease, and indeed Parkinson's disease. Another study by the Karolinska Institute in Sweden that was published in The Lancet here in the UK showed that footballers are 50% more likely to develop dementia compared to the general population. This research and a comparative analysis of health records of 6,000 top division Swedish players and over 56,000 non-footballers. The study also explored the contrast between outfield players and goalkeepers. Researchers discovered that outfield players, as you might expect, faced a much higher risk of Alzheimer's and other types of dementia compared to the general population. In contrast, goalkeepers, who we know seldom head the ball, they showed no increase of Alzheimer's disease, dementia, or other similar conditions. The World Health Organization says that between 5 to 8% of the general population over the age of 60 has dementia. However, for England's greatest ever team, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the 1966 World Cup winning team, and I know we're not being partisan, we're in agreement here, but that was achieved under a Labour government with Harold Wilson. I think we also won the Eurovision Song Contest that year, if I'm not mistaken. But research carried out by Sky Sports News found that of that 66 World Cup winning team, 46%, almost half of them, were suffering from some degenerative brain conditions like Alzheimer's disease. CTE. I'm happy to give way to my.
I'm very grateful to my good friend for giving way. I'd actually forgotten that England had won the World Cup in 1966.
I've never heard that.
It's not something we hear often, Mr. Deputy Speaker. But would he agree? Because he has been dealing with the scepticism that many former footballers who are wingers are actually the ones who worked it out, because they were crossing the ball and worked out that the high-profile cases were people who were either centre-halves heading the ball out or centre-forwards heading the ball in.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and certainly academic studies have looked at this. They've identified goalkeepers as not being at any more risk than any other member of the population, but certainly centre-halves, centre-forwards. And it isn't just the 90 minutes of football, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it's also the many hours of training, of consistently heading the ball that have contributed to this. And as I say, the general community and the football authorities have got a duty of care to the people who are suffering now. If I may, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I just want to mention another academic study, this time from Boston University in the United States, identifying CTE in young amateur athletes who play contact sports. And after examining the brains of 152 participants, this is in a post-mortem situation, who had died under the age of 30, they found that 41.4% had signs of CTE. More than 70% of those diagnosed were amateur athletes. They're really quite shocking figures, for people who are involved with repetitive brain injury. So it's imperative to pursue further research to determine Not if there is a link, because there is a link, that's not in dispute, but whether there is a safe threshold for heading the ball. While the ideal level of heading the ball is 0, football authorities must undertake comprehensive research to fulfil their duty of care to players and establish a head-safe level. I'm not anti-football, Mr Deputy Speaker. I love football. I love the game. It's our national sport. But I want it to be safe, and I want us to recognise the responsibility to former players who are now suffering from these terrible conditions. Players themselves are rightly concerned about the risks associated with heading, and there was a study by the Drake Foundation that found that 66% of amateur footballers fear the impact of heading the ball on their health, with 70% advocating for guidelines to restrict heading in training and 48% desiring reduced heading in matches. There's also substantial support for extending rules in youth football, with 56% of parents endorsing restrictions on heading in training for children up to the age of 18. The onus lies squarely on the football authorities to ensure their protocols and practices prioritise player safety. This includes ongoing research and immediate reductions in heading during training and in matches, and a willingness to adapt the game to mitigate risks. There's no doubt about it, the game's changed. When I was first watching the game, it was much more physical. You know, there were few. I mean, I think there were substitutes, but I think they were only allowed one substitute. But the game has evolved and changed. It's quite right that it should. There will inevitably be a shift in the way football is played, but such an evolution is inherent to the sport. And the recent England v Scotland match, I hope you don't mind me mentioning this. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be divisive, Mr. Speaker, but on Tuesday, I've forgotten the score already. I'm not gloating. But it's
just to put on record, Mr Deputy Speaker, Scotland don't do too well in football against lesser nations.
Thank you very much for that. For the record, thank you. But it was actually the 150th anniversary of international football. But I'm sure that game bore little resemblance to the inaugural England-Scotland international in 1872, you know, in terms of the way it was played. I don't just mean the attire, the longer shorts and so on. So the game does change, and that's not a bad thing. It's critical to recognise that player safety should not be perceived as a threat to the game. Instead, it should be viewed as a new chapter in the ongoing development of a sport we all cherish. To safeguard football for generations to come, we must wholeheartedly support the concept of head-safe football. From a governmental perspective, the implications are clear. We should adopt a public health approach. The Minister holds a crucial role in funding education and awareness to future-proof football for today and tomorrow. This includes raising awareness about the risks associated with repetitive heading and its links to degenerative brain disease. My honourable friend mentioned the former West Brom striker, the legend Jeff Astle, who died from a neurodegenerative disease associated with heading the ball. He died in 2002. The coroner actually ruled he'd suffered death through an industrial disease, although it isn't identified officially as an industrial disease. And it's worth noting that my constituent, Dr. Judith Gates, has assiduously lobbied the Industrial Injuries Advisory Council over the past 3 years to recognise CTE as an industrial disease. Despite presenting extensive and authoritative information and research, IAC, the Industrial Injuries Advisory Council, has unfortunately failed in its duty to acknowledge this disease, and I hope the Minister may be able to assist in his closing remarks in persuading IAC to look again at this. The evidence supporting this recognition is overwhelming, including numerous peer-reviewed studies and coroner verdicts. It's high time to prompt the Industrial Injuries Advisory Council to step onto the pitch and fulfil their responsibilities, acknowledging this issue and taking the necessary actions. Football holds a special place in our national psyche. It's a sport enjoyed by millions each week. It's evident that participation is on the rise. The professional football landscape's evolving with the National League North team, South Shields, transitioning to a full-time model, signalling growth even in the lower divisions. Yet the most remarkable growth lies in the Women's Super League and the Women's Championship. The Lionesses have been a source of inspiration for the nation. They've had tremendous success, and it's heartening to witness more young girls embracing football and getting involved in active sport. However, as the game expands, as the women's game expands, it brings along new challenges, because medical studies indicate that female athletes are almost twice as likely to develop CTE than their male counterparts. And while I wholeheartedly support the surge in women's football, amidst the growth, the safety of women players remains paramount. Given the additional risks faced by female athletes, I hope the Women's Super League will be a trailblazer in establishing head-safe football protocols. Football's a tightly knit community, and it must address this issue both now and in the future. Clubs that have prospered thanks to the skills and contributions of players like Bill Gates, my constituent, have a responsibility to prioritise the well-being of their players. It's imperative that we take action to support a generation of players who are currently facing the challenges of degenerative brain diseases such as dementia and Alzheimer's disease. With a clear connection between repetitive heading and CTE now established, it's high time we focus on increasing awareness and providing education at all levels of the game. Additionally, we should implement policies and procedures to restrict heading, whether during training sessions or actually in games themselves. And in bringing my remarks to a conclusion, I would like to ask the Minister to make it clear to the football authorities that this is their opportunity to deliver head-safe football, reducing the risk today and progressing the research to understand if there is a safe level of heading. If, as an industry, a multi-billion-pound industry, I might say, at the highest level, football authorities do not accelerate their action on this matter, the Minister must be clear that the government will have no option but to intervene to protect public health. I would like to end with the words of my constituent Bill Gates, who, on his diagnosis, told his family, "It's too late for me, but I want to plant a tree so that others can benefit from its shade." I want to thank Judith, Bill and the whole family, and I will do everything I can to future-proof football for today and tomorrow's players, and I hope the Minister will commit to do the same. Thank you.